Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming tonight. I'm Freeny Yianni, Director of Close Ltd, a gallery in Somerset, and we've been very lucky to be presenting the work of Helen Barff, who's been exploring safe spaces and the idea of refuge within the broader sense and in the local area of Taunton. That's taken her on an enormous journey. She's been showing here at the Brewhouse, and I hope you've all had a chance to see the show. And we've got an amazing exhibition at Close also, which connects. This evening is really about really exploring the subject of refuge and safe spaces and what it means to the broader sense of what these three artists. This is Helen Barff and Julie Brixey-Williams and Irena Shmatova. Julie Brixey-Williams is a multidisciplinary performance sculptor, artist, incredibly interesting work, which is in a way suffers from the idea of being undefinable, but she will do, I'm sure, a brilliant job this evening of letting you know what her processes are and how she explores her environments. And she too is on a journey. She understands her work through her travelling through and understanding different parts of the world. And Irena Shmatova has just arrived in Taunton from the Ukraine and has a much deeper and more current situation, as you can all understand. Also, Irena has just learned how to speak English. And she speaks incredible English, and she's only just, 2 months. She's been here 2 months with her son, and she's, so we're very lucky to have her here tonight. And without further ado, I'll let the three artists discuss their work. They're going to each spend a little bit of time telling you all about what they've been exploring and what they've been developing. So there'll be then an interval, and then we will be introducing Professor Catherine Loveday, who's a neuropsychologist, and also historian Andrew Powell-Thomas, who is a published author of children's and adult books, and he is fascinated with militaria, World War II, and has really delved into those subjects. So thank you. Hope you enjoy the lecture or the performance or whatever we're going to be presented with. Thank you.
Right. Hello, I'm Helen Barff. And I was just going to start by just quickly saying thank you, actually, to a couple of people, but very quickly, particularly Freeny and everyone at Close, Sarah, wherever she is, and for facilitating and supporting this, and to the panel. And then I've got written here, it says all the people of Somerset, but I think what I meant by that was, all the people of Somerset, but I think I particularly meant the people who I've been allowed me to interview them and things over the last few months. And I've also had to say thank you to the Arts Council who are supporting this. So I was invited by Freeny to show at her gallery in Hatch Beecham and here at the Brewhouse. And it was important to us when we started discussing this project to relate it to the area and to the community. And when I started researching this area, I was immediately struck by this Taunton stop line. which some of you will know of, but it's a 50-mile line of concrete bunkers and defences from World War II. Andrew can tell us more in a bit. With much of it still exists, like sort of remnants or scars in the landscape. And for me, it linked to an interest in memories of place, or how memories, I think, are nearly always linked to a location or a place. And they also, this Taunton stop line also spoke of the vulnerability of human beings, and they're sort of strong concrete things, very solid, but there's an image there. But of course would have been useless had the German army got that far. And I began looking at how they were part of the mobilisation of the Home Guard, and this very strong motivation to protect home, which of course we see in Ukraine and other parts of the world too. So this led to the idea of focusing on safe spaces. And of course we were just coming out of lockdown, and home seemed a very current topic as well. And home is usually mentioned as a safe place, a place that embraces you and holds you. It can be protective, but also constricting, or even imprisoning, like we saw in lockdown, or I did anyway. Just a little bit of brief background. So with my work, for the past few years, I've been working particularly with clothing and how it relates, whether it's your own clothing or someone close to you, how it can hold or provoke autobiographical memories of a person, a place, or a time. This piece is called Stack, and it's casts of folded clothing. And this is called Rise Yellow, and it's a cast of a baby's cardigan. So it looks massive there, but it's kind of this big. So my process for these sculptures was I stitch the clothing, fill it with plaster or concrete, some kind of casting material, and then peel the fabric off. So it leaves a trace of the fabrics, colour and texture. So clothing, or even the memory of it, I think can be a protective safe space. And these memories can give you, as Catherine would call it, I think, as a scaffolding or an identity. So focusing on this idea of safe spaces, I started wrapping and swaddling small forms. So these, again, they look huge. They're about this big. And these are in the last three works I've showed you were all in the exhibition at Close in Hatch Beecham. And the title of the show, I Wrap My Fear Around Me Like a Blanket, is a line from a song called Closer to Fine by the Indigo Girls. It's a 1980s song, but I heard it recently after the death of a close friend, an artist friend who had been very supportive to me when I was juggling being an artist with young children. And the line stuck with me, and I think it has a sort of poetic tenderness and the idea of treating fear with tenderness, and a bit like grieving for someone close, and you wrap yourself up in the grief and carry on with holding their presence with you. So I took this idea further and started making these ideas of making sort of sculptural hugs, if you like, so that the idea of holding and wrapping became a hug. And this one is it's about this big. And it's a handkerchief that belongs to my late father that's wrapped around these forms. And I started interviewing local elder people about World War II memories, and people I spoke to often said their safe place was a person. And so the next image is from here, from the Brewhouse exhibition. And these are the larger hugs. So with these, I mean, you might have seen them in the gallery. They're big, they're kind of human-sized. And rather than the blanket doing the wrapping now, I made the blanket became this sort of anthropomorphic form that's being squeezed by a very strong hug, the cast hug. So the hug section, the bit around sort of doing the squeezing, is cast from arms of legs of clothing that wrap and squeeze. And the arms and legs of my son's clothing, who is actually someone who not always so keen on hugs, but he wears these, likes wearing these sort of checked lumberjack shirts, sort of the tartan pattern. And you can see that where I've cast it, and you can see the pattern of that. And also I interviewed Catherine's mother, Scylla, who also told me about a jumper that she had as a child, which was a tartan jumper. And this jumper, I think, was very much a sort of safety blanket for her. So that's why I've cast in using these arms. They're just the arms wrapping around, and the smaller yellow one is legs wrapping around. So a hug, I thought, it can be needed, but it can also be and protective, but also constricting. And so these hugs have a real heavy weight. And weight is something that really interests me when I'm making my work. I think about that a lot, and weightlessness, and thinking about whether a memory is heavy or light. And I think usually memories are heavy and have a weight. And the concrete on the far side, the yellow big hug, has a rope that goes up, and there's a concrete weight on the end. So that's sort of playing around with this idea of weight. And that concrete weight was cast in the same yellow blanket that the rest of it's made in. So it appears soft, but it's solid, heavy concrete. And its function is just to weigh it down, to stabilize it, and to locate this thing in a place. But the shape of that concrete weight is taken from a dragon's tooth, which is a World War II concrete bollard that was used to stop tanks. But because I cast it in fabric, I made the shape in fabric, because I cast it in fabric, it sort of bulges rather than being angular. So going back to the World War II defences and the pillboxes, I found them actually really hard to work with. And I think Julie is going to talk more about that. She could sympathise with that. So I was very drawn to them, and I was drawn to the concrete because I work with concrete. So I thought I was used to it. But these structures don't give anything. They're hostile, defensive. And I tried drawing it as I drew the den drawings that are in the exhibition, and it just didn't work. So I thought I had to bring more tactility into it, as well as weight. As well as weight. Touch is central to my practice, and for me relates to drawing and the surface and the materiality of sculptures. So I decided to use bed sheets on this piece, and I've used bed sheets before, and for me they also related to this idea of den building, which I'll come back to in a minute, and how children build dens from blankets and sheets, and of course the bed sheets sort of remind us of the safety of home. So I wrapped the pillbox up a sort of Christo style, sort of softening it and swaddling it, and then I did a huge rubbing of it. This was in that sort of 40-degree heat, so it was quite a job, and the roof as well. And actually, this day it rained, so it got soaking wet. And now this is hung in the gallery. That's the roof, which looks surprisingly massive when you see it in there. And it's sort of so it's in the gallery. The space of the pillbox becomes unfolded and sort of turns inside out, and it takes away the weight of that of the pillbox. And I recently discovered some other works, actually, which some of you might be familiar with, of Matt and Rob Vale, who did a similar, not a similar, but they were similarly drawn to the pillboxes. I think they call themselves Illuminos, and they did a project lighting them up. And I was quite intrigued by this. They projected things onto them that actually it did a similar thing in a very different way, in that it was wrapping the pillboxes, but wrapping them in light, and also made them feel weightless in a way. So these pillboxes are something that artists seem to be drawn to, and as well as being drinking dens and whatever other function they serve, they seem to have an appeal. And then these drawings, so there's 3 of them in the gallery here, and then this collection are at Close. And I was carried on trying to draw the pillbox, and in the end, I decided I needed to dissolve this hostile, difficult structure. So I used this very watery ink, and I wanted to see how far I could go with dissolving it and still retain a form of dwelling. I like how some of them become sort of faces and become a bit more anthropomorphic. And I chose these domestic colours to paint them on, painted the paper all these different colours, and they're sort of domestic colours. They're actually the little sample pots that you get from the DIY shop. And what I found also talking to people, and from my own experience, is that you carry safe places with you. And like this could be from childhood, home, or imaginative spaces. And you remember them, you internalize them. It's almost like a daydreaming space that continues to protect you. And I see my children doing it, building dens, and which can be very territorial, extremely, and making their own safe space. And this is one of their dens. And I drew this using my fingers in crushed graphite dust because I wanted to emphasize the tactility. And it's on black painted paper. I wanted it to look shroud-like, like something that becomes immortalized in memory. And as part of this project, I ran a den building workshop with Somerset Youth Theatre, which was great fun. I loved it. And the kids involved, they invented a character, and then they had to build a den for it. And you can hear them talking on the audio stories, the podcast that accompanies this, and that the audio stories, they're really sort of chats. There's nothing, there's no kind of gripping drama. It's just listening to people talk. And as well as the kids, it includes elders recalling World War II memories of safe places, and interviews with artists, Somerset artists, Brian Rice and JC Wall, as well as conversations with some of the others on the panel here. So I think I'm kind of done. There's also outside the exhibition, there's no obligation, but if you feel inclined, there's some postcards where I'm collecting people's, you can write or draw on it where your safe place is, real or imagined. And then if you still haven't had enough of all this, there's Andrew and I are doing a canal walk on Sunday, looking at pillboxes and remnants of World War II in the landscape. The details are all on the website. Oh, and I should say the podcast thing is on the exhibition page. And Andrew's also doing another talk on the Remembrance Sunday, a remembrance talk focusing on the Taunton stop line. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Julie. Thank you.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I arrive here having just spent 2 weeks on the most amazing artist retreat in Kilrillig in Ireland, where I created my own asylum and sanctuary for healing post-PhD. Asylum literally meaning a place of safety. So tonight I'm going to be talking about a project I made during those 4 years of practice as research, where I took a method of relating to people and things via small material acts in context and across qualities of time from a mental health community founded by the psychiatrist Ida Lang, known as the Archway communities. Hello? Yep. So one Archway community was documented in the film Asylum. Sorry, this is a bit slow on it. Pick up, yeah, very good. Where the film crew lived with the residents and was described by cameraman Adams as a place of magical ambiguity. And I used this film to create my practice method to explore relationality with place. And one of these places was a World War II pillbox on the Essex marshlands in Pagglesham, near to where I grew up. So I'm going to present a visual essay of this particular project as I read some extracts from reflective writing I used to try and understand and illuminate the encounter that Place and I were having together over a period of 18 months, which culminated in some performative gestures and later a representation of the work as a multi-layered sound and film installation. However, before I start reading, a little background. So in the 70s, Lang's radical communities stepped outside the traditional asylum model of the day, creating mixed gender spaces in houses where residents who paid rent lived on equal hierarchical terms with therapists and others. So they were small communities that were allowed to shape themselves, and no one household was a mirror of another. There was permission for a wide range of behaviours, so performative, drawings, playing with objects physically and metaphorically, and an everyday system that was more about navigation and unexpected connection. Social context was acknowledged as an important factor in fashioning the self, and within these houses, a space for co-presence was fostered for connections and for relationships to flourish. I termed this model a labour of attentiveness, a labour that encompasses the acceptance of difference, listening, multiple modes of operation, so you can see performance, vocalising, drawing, writing, and house remodelling, and just being with. A labour that held a space for rhythm, mixing, flow, and pause, while simultaneously preventing destabilisation. And it was the responsibility of everyone in the house to attend to it. A fine, risky balance that allowed new emergent forms to arrive and was navigating potential disaster. So through my sculptural and performative practice, I reanalyzed Lang and his team's methods through theories of materialism and space-time mattering. But tonight, to make sure this isn't a really dry academic talk, I've omitted all those dated references, but there is a sheet if anyone's interested at the end. My aim throughout was to allow place to express itself variously through the material encounter and to promote an engagement that was both equal and authentic and which would essentially shape the emergent artworks. And the work was called Corresponds to Pagglesham. I collapse, sitting sulkily on the bank to the right of the pillbox after 2 days and 7 long and very hot hours of trying to touch, perform, play, and engage. Look, I say in frustration, putting my head in my hands, I'm very hot, very fed up, and very tired now. Why won't you just speak to me? Heartbeat. Then a quiet voice from the left said, it's shady over here. We greet each other. Pagglesham, Essex, 2019. My context was a World War II pillbox sited on the Essex Marsh at Pagglesham. This instrumental architecture with dual functions of caring and guarding is literally an edge dweller, straddling the margins of agricultural land, sea marsh, tide and sky. Walpole describes these marshlands as melancholy and psychologically challenging, and they had always slightly repelled and bored me as a child with their muted palette and empty wide grey skies. This shape-shifting Essex coastline has a history of migration, marginalised allegiances, and for attracting communities of non-conformist, peculiar people. The now redundant pillbox presents a very masculine, fixed phenomenology, which I felt offered a rich element of difference between us, with the potential for friction within our engagement. This defensive structure, originally in service to others as a place of action, also operated as a synthesis of combat clothing and habitat, so would offer a significant challenge to test my labour of attentiveness, operating through a cared, sharing, embodied engagement. Its unyielding concrete structure reminded me of psychological defence mechanisms which continue to be operative long after the original trauma has receded. As such, it resonated with Lang's observation of post-war angst, but I was keen to find a way to work with its history without resorting to the well-rehearsed story or stock response. Taking a history can skew, and it's often better to allow things to emerge and then follow them back. And this had unexpected personal resonance as the project continued. We shyly ignore each other. I scan, I listen, birdsong, grass rippling, aeroplanes from the local airport, bleached white crab shells, a multitude of flies, a squish of mud under dry-looking marsh tufts, deep calligraphic channels of water that disappear at high tide, the unmistakable and overpowering smell of tidal detritus, and the unrelenting wind. I consider what I bring in terms of memory and recall the assault of wind on my ears as a child almost driving me mad, and how as a teenager it seemed like a place nobody in their right mind would choose for a family afternoon out. Can I get past this? Your once fluid cement is now petrified, and guarded you lie low, keeping up your pretense of formality, but on closer examination I see you are unsettled, not so rigidly grounded. Time, tide and matter has passed through you on a regular basis, creating flux, slippage and tilting, gently collapsing your boundaries, so you are now undisciplined and wonky to the horizon. I patiently creep down so low to see your perspective. Oops, sorry, it's got there. That the lichen could grow on me. Your windows look back, a multiple Janus. I circle, you brood a bit. I don't enter until the afternoon, feeling nervous. It's now an unsavoury space of soft mud, rust, old beer cans, plastic buckets and graffiti. It recalls the messy physicality of the film Asylum and the metaphorical state in the psychotherapeutic crucible called Negredo, where instinctual drives fall into matter that have to be faced or recognised before clarification can occur. My excursion across the debris generates frightening, explosive sounds. Any optical privilege is diminished by the darkness, leaving deep resonating connection to the space through my body. Once inside, I'm very aware of the human scale of this place, with 5 leftover wooden gun supports where men would have rested. The land outside is cut into 6 startling bright snapshots, and I realise you are all about hiding and scoping and sudden adrenaline responses. There is endless sky. I wonder what heartbeats and emotions you have held there. Your audience of me is unsettling, and I am suddenly aware of my position as a lone female here. I don't know what to do. I don't know if this will work. Your shyness is quietly very strong, and you seem to say, leave me alone. I decide to sidle performatively around your perimeter, scraping my skin on the harsh pebble dash. Perhaps I can catch you unawares. I measure through my body, pour myself through the windows like asylum resident David Bell, and photograph. But it's a very unsatisfying, formal introduction. Suddenly, at the end of the day, you offer me activity. Masses of tiny flies are buzzing busily, crossing and recrossing your window, and the aircraft passing in the distance turn them into multiple warplanes. History seems to leap across the window frame. I feel there is an unexplained but recognised moment of engagement here, so I set up my video and film for 20 minutes. I leave. I carry a pillbox inside my body as I walk around London, around my house. Perhaps I can soften you through a more feminine or playful encounter and meet your shy and vulnerability in order to bring out your truth. There is a palpable tension between protection, restraint, and freedom. We need to build trust. Can we bring your truth out into visibility, into the world? Can you exit through the window? I recognise in the muted colours of the isolated marshlands the dingy palette that drew comment in Robinson's film, and this place, with its never-ending skies and level horizons, stretches on without relief in a mundane, somewhat tedious way. To capture the sense of the radical shift of the 70s and 60s, I decide to make use of a psychedelic pink in the asylum's opening to create moments of visual friction and make a connection with the marsh pinks that are all over the location. Pink also has associations with the body and very specifically with the blush of emotion. Often forgotten as an organ in its own right, the skin offers not only physical boundary, but is an organ of communication, a psychological and emotional link embryonically to the brain, as they both develop from the same ectodermal sheet. The pink flush of skin, therefore, may be viewed as offering a visual expression of a psychological state. Over the next visits, I bring a psychedelic pink kitsch feather duster, which I use to try and tickle you out of your serious grounded state, its feathers flying off in the wind like the local seabirds, and a variety of other things with performative potential to act as playful invitations, which I try to unlabel from their received usage. A hand mirror that flips the land and seascapes into new fractured perspectives and bounces the outside into your dark interior. Soft lace pieces that mimic your lichen, glass panels I write on. I play. I salute your architecture, recalling my father's naval role in the war, limit my gestural responses to the small dimensions of the roof, dance to land and sea, kick around and stamp on the rubbish and record its percussive gunfire, fill your walls with my face, touch, lean, blow dandelion clocks and attract confused attention from the dog walkers, and battle relentlessly with the wind that asserts itself to obstruct and distort all my audio recordings while whipping away the words from my mouth. But my labours are not attentive. My efforts fail because I'm trying too hard, doing but not listening to your replies. I am not being with you. I carry a pillbox inside my body as I walk around London and around my house. I return to the things that keep recurring, a sense of catatonic protective groundedness against the potential of freedom and endless sky, and then oddly come across a small cigarette card showing a military kite. These scouting instruments offer strategic perspective on the land and are the opposite of a pillbox, which is a grounded thing looking up and out. Fortuitously, I immediately find a shocking pink hexagonal kite on eBay that mirrors the shape of the pillbox. And suddenly Lang's belief in truth in transparency and visibility tugs on the memory of the feather duster releasing its feathers. And by offering a new perspective, perhaps I will offer the pillbox the possibility of rejecting its heavy mould in favour of a lighter state of visible play. But the terms need to be delineated by the multiple elements of the pillbox for it to retain its authentic voice, because only then can its essential sense of self resolve into a coherent whole from my fragmented parts. So, I cannot and have never been able to fly a kite. The emergent outcome is uncertain. To implicate the recording apparatus in my process, I will need to film by handheld camera while simultaneously flying the kite. The wind dips and changes with every visit. The roof is very small and so will severely delineate the terms of my engagement. I could even fall off, and definitely no running will be possible. We will figure it out together, but I'll do the risk assessment. So for 2 long days, I try and I fail to fly the kite, pulling, leaping, tugging, filming every disappointing attempt. There is tension. The kite tears. I tear. I care for us. On the 3rd day, I stop trying to fly the kite. I align myself with place and I wait. After a few minutes, the wind worries the kite and it soars, and I am taken up. Nuanced efforts of adjustment keep it in the air as I listen through my body, camera in harmony, and we enter a dance of animacy where structure, elements, kite and body are one. I have to have faith my distance camera can capture this, as I'm unable to leave to check. A head cam and a handheld camera register my bodily adjustments, immersed in the immediacy of the moment, and they create 2 slightly different contexts of reality and limit my body. Keeping the kite between the screen becomes another part of the labour of attentiveness, as each embedded singular part, apparatus, body, wind, context, gently shift their power across the surface. Over the next hour, I let out all the string and experience a deep sense of co-presence as the ongoing rhythmical attunement allows the kite to perform its nomadic processual wanderings. Our knowing exists in correspondence in this moment via these materials in this specific context, and I am transformed. So I'm going to jump now, because I'm aware I've only got a few more slides, where I read into the pillbox as a sounding chamber the 57 ports my 17-year-old father sailed to during World War II. My vocal performance shifts to one of undisciplined relationality as the sounding chamber echoes and distorts. I reflect this extreme form of vocalizing might appear mad, unintelligible, or socially uncomfortable, and wonder if people are passing outside, but relish not knowing, as I roll my tongue around the unfolding articulations as a form of choreography of the mouth, or ambiguous transrational salad, as Labelle would say. My voice is no longer solely my property, but exists in a shared reverberating space. The consonants of the place names unhinge from their meanings to become singular resonating material poetics that communicate that space. Chesapeake, Syracuse, Biserta, Juno Gold Beach, Anzio, Casablanca, Rangoon. My breath is transformed into a different kind of wind, placed into the power of things, as the lithic liveness of the cement structure creates a reciprocal auditory hail to my performance, leaping across intergenerational spatiality and time. We are listening together, calibrating our body surfaces as we vocalize matter. I recall the film of the tiny flies buzzing across the window. They now seem more like my father's ship, crisscrossing the expansive space of the sea. I stretch the inner recording of my voice to match exactly the exterior window's film 20 minutes length, placing the outcome firmly into the editing process. What emerges is a soundscape of low, unsettling, moaning wind being carried across the oceans, as if the words my father could never speak were set free. So the last three that I have, sorry, I missed one there, is the final representation. So there were three different films of different lengths, and they ran on loops. So they just kept making different combinations as they went through. This is another shot, and then there's a video which I'll try and make work just for a minute. Those are the references if anyone wants them, but do just come and ask me. And thank you very much. Do you want me to get it all?
Hello everyone, thank you so much that I can be on this beautiful place. My name is Irena Shmatova. I am from Ukrainian. I used to live from Irpin, it's Kiev region, and the war was started. It was the first place then was attacked from Russian soldiers. And I'm really lucky. Because I just can in time pick up my family from this place, because after 3 hours then I pick up them. All town was blocked, and a lot of people was died on that moment because the want to run away, and it was impossible. I must apologize about my English because I'm just started to use this language 3 months ago, and I've never used it before. I'm sorry, sometimes it's really horrible. And we had flat, yeah, it was 2 floors flat from European. It was my husband, he is sculptor. It was studio on the first floor and bedrooms on the second floor. I can't go to the second floor because it was bombed and my flat was burned out. And I can show you result of beautiful Russian word. And this not about horrible picture. I want to explain you why I draw picture. It's a fairy story about little snail, yeah, and maybe this picture, this fairy story for my son, because he can't understand anything on this situation, yeah, and he must understand, maybe must is too hard word, yeah, maybe he should understand all, really all what you need all time with you, all what you need all time in your heart, yeah, and all your word can be just a little backpack, and this backpack you can pick up on all place, and this backpack may be and your heart more safely zone in your world, because then you stay alive, hope never die. And it just my flat, horrible, I think, but
Вот после себя оставляет прекрасный русский мир.
Yeah, it's a sculpture of my husband. It's bronze, yeah. My brother said it was your jeweler said
вот это вот книги, которые любил читать мой сын. Тут все вот его игрушки, как вы видите.
All his toys.
Вот как
you can see
как
it,
все
yeah.
прекрасно.
Это
моя ванна.
On the first floor.
Плитка, которую мы выбирали.
Yeah. Sometimes.
Даже что-то уцелело. Вот как бы. Вот как бы все. Машинка.
Yeah, it's a fridge. Yeah. And I can't, of course, I can't go on the second floor. Yeah, you see, it's all destroyed. Yeah, it was my brother. Yeah, and after that, I started to draw a little book for my son. It's I can't save my work. I can't pick up a lot of materials or paint, of course, and volunteers took me a gift. Yeah, it was a really small and really funny book. I have just ink pen, and I'm started to draw. Yeah. I think I need something other. Yeah, it will be. Yes, no? Maybe was what I need to do. Yeah, and this one. Yeah, it's I love strange shape, and I really love different shape, and this one is of course destroyed. It's the first picture about how we and why we must away. Yeah, it was winter, and my son have really strange head. Yeah. He's sometimes naughty boy, of course, like all children. And I was head of house and from European, and I must pick up all my neighbors. Not must, but I think it will be right. Then I can help a lot of people to evacuation. And I talk about this situation. Really funny. I know on this situation it can't be funny, but it was really funny. We had one pretty lovely old lady who lived on the first floor, and she said to me, "Oh, I have 3 cats, I have 4 dog, cat, okay, we can pick up, but," she said, "I have 15 snails, really big snails, like your foot, 15 Russian soldiers. They are arrived in our town, tanks, bombed it. No, they are my babies. It was really horrible. I'm stayed not just angry, I stayed like furious. Yeah, I said, snails! No. Snails, okay, maybe maybe because these snails now on my picture, because 15 snails is too much to me, really, too much. And this is the way to the west, because we stay on the central Ukrainian, and we must go to the west Ukrainian, and a lot of people must run on the car, and I said I'm lucky because 3 hours ago it be impossible because Russian soldiers shoot at all car, and a lot of people was died. It's about how we hide in, it's about refuge because all time bombed it, and you must go to the underground, you must hide in all time, and you can to explain your son why you must do it, because he can't understand. Yes, on one case he's adult because he's 8 years old, yes, not baby, but on other case he's baby. Yeah, he can't understand why before all was really good, really pretty, really lovely, and on the one short moment, all change. Yeah, it's a really bad experience for my son, and for me, I think too. Yeah, it's about warm thing from warm hand because we just run away. We need warm clothes, yeah. And our neighbors, people, when I saw first time, present me a lot of things because I haven't clothes on that moment. It was really cold. It was winter, and just winter from England to winter from Ukraine, and we have extremal temperature. It was -20. Yeah, it was really cold, and we just run away and stay like slippers and just coat, and that's all. Yeah. And about volunteers, a lot of people. I think it's maybe for all people. You just leave, and maybe you like chat box, yes, about other people. Oh, it's person really not good. But if something, you can see something really dangerous, yeah, you can see really bad situation. All people they did it, yeah. All people keep together, like like your hugs, yeah, and want to save, because it's maybe not about personal character, yeah. It's about community. It's about I think feeling, because it's now I can say about it, yeah, like a funny story. But on that moment, for example, my son had really big hysteric, and my husband all time must hugs he and keep he, and I'm just finished driver school, yeah, just 3 days ago. Yeah, and I must under the bonnet driver my car. It was 4,060 kilometers, and it was really hard for me because after my driving, my son know now a lot of bad words. Yeah, I'm so sorry, but boom, boom, and other strange thing. Yeah, sorry, I'm now said it's a bad word. He said use it. Yeah, yeah, it's shame for me, but it's true. Yeah, and all people show their true face. Yeah, it's amazing because a lot of people take you really big support, because you never guess, you never understanding on this, then you run away. Yeah, you can't understand, you can't guess. Maybe in this place will be good, maybe bad, maybe more bad, more horrible than that place than you left. Yeah, but all people, a lot of people, they are amazing. Yeah, and I had met a lot of volunteers who help people, and I met a guy. He was from Holland. He went to Ukrainian and want to pick up people from East Ukrainian, and take them from West Ukrainian. And it's really dangerous work. And the first time I'm stay with this group of volunteers and help them, and it was really funny. He said now he's staying in Rivne in West Ukraine 3 days, and he said now my mommy talent for me, and we I think we have translator, and we all think, oh, mommy from Holland now said you must back in the home. Mommy, what are you doing the West Ukrainian? You must be on front line. He said, who is your mommy? He said, oh, he's soldiers. Ah, I see. yeah, she's soldiers. I'm so sorry. She's soldiers. His mommy is soldiers. Yeah, it's about shooting star. Yeah, because Miha, my son, his name is Miha, start to be really afraid. Then he can hear sound, and when he can see shooting star, he never want to make a wish. Yeah, he think it's maybe something dangerous. Yeah, and I'm draw this picture about it. It's named Just Shooting Stars. Yeah. And you see this hedgehog now, the way has no end. He took a lot of apples for these 2 snails. Yeah, he stay without anything, because it's I met people like this hedgehog. It's about what we are doing from West Ukraine on the first day of war. We then before I am started to pick up people from European and from East Ukrainian. I'm of course made nets, yeah, for camouflage of tanks of our army, yeah, and I made it really good because I'm an artist. Yeah, it was beautiful for color and about composition. I said, we are the best because we are an artist, of course. Yeah. It's a lot of people after the Russian soldiers back to Russia can back for their home, but about to explain why we can't do it. Yeah, because it's about dogs and cat. They are amazing. A lot of people stay from occupation from Irpin because, for example, their neighbors lived dogs, and one man who was head of house, he stay because he must feed cats and dogs, and was not his animal. They just can't leave this animal in occupation or without food or clothed in the flat. And the first time it was really angry, because it was really angry, really big and really aggressive to dogs. But after 1 month, after then spent this time from occupation, they are really pretty, really lovely, really friendly dog, and they are really funny. And of course we are pick out of these animals. Yes, it's because I think maybe it's about humans. One different between humans and animals. Maybe it's more about you can understand feeling other person, because animals just think about area, think about food. They can think what are the part of pride of family animals. Family, I don't know what to name it, what is called in English. What they are feeling, but human, all time must think not just about people or human on the person, but on animals too. Because if you are human, you must think about your natural, about place then you live, about birds, about animals. It's normal. It's about humanism, I think. It's not about I'm brave or other thing. I think all can do it, and on that situation all did it, because I said not about brave, because a most strong feeling than you have on this time. If you stayed on this situation, it's maybe furious and hate about people who destroyed it all. Not just your house, your forest, your river, your neighbor. About your neighbor, it's horrible. I know. It's a lot of people who comes and saw what feeling. It was no good experience. It's about how you can spend your time, and why we stay underground. Because all trees have rules, and people have rules too, and I think it's more easy to understanding for little children. Why we must be underground, not on ground, because they stayed really afraid. Then you say, for example, planes, it will be bombed. We must run away. And just keep the calm and say it slow, we can go, and we can see something interesting, for example, roots of sunflowers or other things, like silly, but it's work. It work really for children. Then you can stay afraid. For example, mommy just used bad words. She's furious, but not scared, but not afraid. Your son feeling better in this situation. Really strange, but it's true. Sorry, I have horrible English. And that's all, I think. Thank you very much. I'm Yeah, I'm sorry again about my English. Yeah, he, she, I'm always confused. Thank you.
Thank you, Irena. Thank you.
Yeah.
You did very, very well. And thank you, Julie, for that wonderful presentation, and Helen. We're going to break for an interval, and then we're going to invite Andrew Powell-Thomas and Catherine Loveday to join us in a discussion. Catherine and Andrew are going to tell us who they are and what they've been doing in more specific terms. And we'd like to open the floor to questions and anything you might like to ask. So, Catherine, would you like to start?
Hi everyone. So I'm Catherine Loveday. I'm a professor of neuropsychology at the University of Westminster. And Helen's invited me to come and speak to you for about 5 minutes initially, and then hopefully we will all have some discussion. And you might ask, why is a scientist here? And it's because actually Helen and I have worked quite a lot together over the last 6 or 7 years, and I also work with a number of other artists. And art and science actually goes really, really well together. But one of the really important things is that Helen's work makes me think differently about my own work. I study human memory, and I'm interested in how memories are stored in the brain, why some memories are easier to remember than others, and what the function of our memories are. Memory is really complex, obviously. There's lots of different aspects to our memory, but what I work on is our autobiographical memory. So that's our memory for our lives, really. And I'm going to just spend a couple of minutes talking to you about what I know about memory. And one of the key things is that when we do remember something, we're reconstructing. It's never like a videotape that we're replaying. We are reconstructing that memory every single time we remember something. And we do that using building blocks. And those building blocks are kind of our knowledge of our life, the places we've been to, the people we know, all sorts of general knowledge as well, our personal sort of knowledge. But then we have these kind of moments, the sights and the sounds and the smell and the feel and the touch, and all of those things kind of make those memories come alive again so that we feel that we're reliving something. And we know that some memories across our life are stronger than others. And in particular, memories from our sort of late childhood and early teens and into our 20s are particularly powerful. But of course, also any memories of particularly important things, and they may be positive important things or they may be traumatic things, they tend to stick with us as well through life. I wanted to try and pick up on a couple of the things that the themes for this evening. One of the things that happened when Helen and I started work together, so as she mentioned, Helen was very interested in clothing and how clothing kind of embodies our memories. And that led us to have lots of conversations with other people and to explore other people's memories. And one of the things that we found, as she said, is that people often talked about location and place. And I've also found that in my work. So one of the things I've done is I've explored the memories that people generate on desert island discs. So I don't know how many people have listened to desert island discs. I did a scientific study of people's memories in desert island discs. And place is really commonly mentioned, as people are as well. So it's interesting because actually place is something that uniquely represents itself in the brain. So when we go navigating, when we go out and about, our hippocampus, which is the main memory center of our brain, comes to life. And it comes to life for a very good reason, because it's actually really important from an evolutionary point of view that if we leave our home, we can find our way back to it again. And so the minute we start navigating, and you can see this in brain imaging and brain scans, as soon as we start navigating, we're activating the memory parts of our brain. Our brain is going, oh, hang on a minute, where are we going? Got to take this in because I've got to be able to find my way back again. So that need to return home and to find a safe space is so innate, it's so kind of fundamentally programmed into us that our brain reacts to place and to navigating around our place in that very, very vivid way. And why is it that safety is important? Well, of course, it makes sense that we need to be safe, but it's quite literally survival. So it's not just, I mean, what the very harrowing stories we've heard from you, Irena, are that literally is survival. You literally had to get out of there to stay alive, and not everyone made it. It's a horribly traumatic situation, and thank you so much for sharing it. It's been really, really interesting to listen to you, but very thought-provoking, and it, you know, the trauma is something that we can't any of us imagine. But for people that haven't been through that level of trauma, safety is still important. It's important to every single one of us that we can find a safe space, because when we are excited and challenged and something stressful, our fight or flight response kicks in, and that's really important. But our body cannot sustain that for long periods of time. We need to go into a place where all of those chemicals come back down again, and our body is in a kind of relaxed state. We have to do that. So for all of us to find a person or a place that makes us feel safe is quite literally a survival technique. So I have brought my backpack on stage, which you might think is a bit odd, but I did it for a reason, because actually the thing that really struck me were your snail pictures. Yeah. And one of the things that Helen and I have been exploring is how people access their memories. What is it that allows us to kind of get close to those memories? And of course, clothing is one of them. Clothing is one way that can happen. But actually, there are so many of these things you mentioned earlier on, scaffolding, memory scaffolding. They're the things, not just our clothes, but the objects, the things that are really important to us. And when you walked out that day, you had to decide, what am I taking with me? And when people have to make that decision, so often what they're taking is items that have meaning and purpose, and that will link them with their sense of identity, their sense of who they are, and the place that they come from. And the reason I've brought this on stage is because it's by a company called Mad Lug. And I'm very touched by this company, because what they do is, for every one of these bags that anyone buys, they will provide a bag to a child in care who is currently walking around with their possessions in a black plastic bag. And we don't think about this, but as soon as people are displaced in any setting, and that can be going into hospital, it can be going into a care home, it can even be going into a prison, they become separated from this memory scaffolding. And that memory scaffolding is part of our identity. It's what allows us to access those memories that are so fundamental in terms of our identity and who we are. So I could talk about memory forever, but I feel like I've kind of done enough for now, so I'm going to hand over.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Andrew Powell-Thomas, and I'm an author and historian. I was contacted by Helen as she was researching this project, and obviously the pillboxes have kind of featured quite heavily in her concept and her artwork. And she kind of persuaded me to come along and help her fill in the kind of the historical side and the significance of the pillboxes that are literally dotted, I was going to say right across the county, but as Julie was with her work, literally across the country, I would say. I've done quite a bit. We've had quite a few walks up and down the canal and finding pillboxes, and please do join us on Sunday if the weather's good. So I'm not sure what the weather's going to be like, and we'll have a bit of a guided walk and talk. And as Helen mentioned earlier, I will go into great detail and depth about the history of the Taunton stop line, a talk here at the Brewhouse on the 11th of November. Again, I've written the book about it, so I could go on and on about the Taunton stop line forever. But I just wanted to give a little bit of kind of the historical side about the stop line and the pillboxes, because they're very, very familiar. They're everywhere across, certainly across Somerset and the West Country. And they're very much, for lots of people, they just become wallpaper. They become something that's in the background. And of course, when they were constructed, they were going to be very much in the foreground. I just wanted to give a little bit of a context to the idea of the pillboxes being a safe space, because that was part of their purpose for being built. To do that, we need to go on a bit of a time trek back to 1940 during the Second World War. Obviously, the conflict had been going since September 39. It had been very much the phony war up until the spring of 1940, with not very much happening. And then the troops that were sent across from Britain onto mainland Europe, they were very much a static and a stationary war at that point. And then when Hitler launched his blitzkrieg attacks and took control of Denmark and Norway, the lowland countries of the Netherlands, Belgium and Luxembourg. By that May and June part of 1940, Britain, I would argue, is very much at her most dangerous moment in certainly in recent history, but in the context of the Second World War, because suddenly that conflict and that war that was very much away is now very much on the shores of Britain. Those troops that retreated to Dunkirk, and we all know the story of Dunkirk and what happened there. Again, that idea of wrapping fear around you like a blanket. Well, those troops had no choice with that, because the Nazi war machine was getting closer and closer and encircling those troops. And that idea of that fight or flight suggestion, the first 6 months of the war was very static, and it was very much just going through the motions. But as soon as that conflict or that potential threat is coming closer, decisions are made quickly and they're made promptly, which often begs the question why they're not made a lot sooner when there's a lot less pressure on in the situation. But I guess it's the pressure scenario that puts people into that fight or flight. And so the idea of Dunkirk and those troops gradually retreating towards the coast, they're being engulfed by the enemy, by the fear, as it were, and then they retreat to the safe space, being back home in the UK, being back home in Britain. And then suddenly that then transfers itself. So that safe space of Britain, it's now surrounded on all sides by the fear of an invasion, by the fear of an enemy. And that's where these pillboxes came in. Decisions had to be made on how to prepare the country, with a potential Nazi invasion of England. And so those pillboxes were constructed on the beaches, inland, and these stop lines were created. And again, I will go into greater depth in a few weeks' time, but these stop lines were essentially to kind of box up the country. The idea being that if an invasion happened in Devon, the Taunton stop line would then hold up the invasion for 2 days. That was the target. Hold them up for 2 days, and the troops that had been rescued from Dunkirk, that were being held in reserve up in the Midlands, would then come down, sort the problem out, and the British Navy would cut off the supply lines. The same being said if an invasion happened in the southeast of England. The stop lines over on that side would hold them up for 2 days, allowing for the problem to be sorted out. And those stop lines were made up of natural and man-made features, so canals, rivers, railway embankments, really utilising what was already existing, because there's not much time to build them. And then these pillboxes form the mainstay of these stop lines. And I think it's been fascinating to see how different people have looked at pillboxes, because by their very nature, they are quite cold, they're quite sturdy, they're quite simplistic designs, partly because of what they're designed to do, shelter someone, and partly because they had to be created within 6 weeks. And it's staggering to think how many there are and how many that are still standing 80 years later, in reasonably good condition. I mean, again, other people have alluded to when you go inside a pillbox, you have to be ready because there's all sorts inside some of them. But they were very much constructed with the idea of providing people with shelter, providing the home guard with shelter. But also the flip side of that is, as soon as the home guard are very much in their pillboxes, defending their land and defending their territory, they also then become a target. Because an enemy, an invader, that fear coming closer around you, that focal point of a pillbox becomes a natural target for the enemy to attack you. And there are different types of pillbox. The standard ones, like we've seen on display today, where they have those little letter boxes almost, where the soldiers inside would look out. You also then have much bigger pillboxes as well, which would have had a much bigger opening, which have had a machine gun in front. And I was at a school today in Bridgewater, and we were looking at the Second World War and talking about the Taunton stop line, because Bridgewater is part of the Taunton stop line, and a fascinating discussion with children on which of those pillboxes would you prefer to be in. Would you prefer to be in the ones that we've seen a lot of today, where the walls are 12 inches bulletproof thick and you've got rifles in there and there's a six-man unit? Or would you prefer to be in one of those slightly bigger gun emplacements, where the walls are 36 inches shell-proof thick and you've got a machine gun? And the initial reaction was, I'd rather be in that bigger pillbox because you've got more concrete and you've got a bigger weapon to defend yourself. But the conversation soon turned round to, actually, if you're in that pillbox that's got the machine gun and the better weapon, that's going to become the focal point of the enemy trying to get you. They're going to want to take out the bigger weapons first rather than the smaller weapons. So these pillboxes were very much seen as like a security blanket, a safe place for people to be in, to defend their homeland. And the other bit I just wanted to touch on was the fact we mentioned the Home Guard. Really interesting. And this is down your alley, I think. When the Home Guard weren't always the Home Guard in the Second World War. They started as the LDF, the Local Defence Volunteers. And when Dunkirk happened, when those troops were brought back from mainland Europe and the invasion of Britain was very likely, they changed the name from Local Defence Volunteers to Home Guard. And I just think somewhere in there, someone at very high levels had the concept of thinking that name change is going to make it much more personal. Volunteers kind of indicates you're doing your best job, but you're not necessarily professional. Home Guards, you are guarding your home. And there's your story, and there's what we see on the news. People defending their homeland, literally defending their homes, is a very, very powerful motivator. And so I think while we think of these pillboxes as being kind of concrete and hollow and shallow, it's the people in them that we actually need to remember. And it's almost like these pillboxes are that memory, that moment of hopefully ensuring that future generations remember what previous generations were prepared to do during Britain's darkest hour. I could go on till midnight talking about the Taunton stop line, but I'm sure there's other people who want to drop in, and we can take some questions. But obviously from a historical point of view, the pillboxes had a purpose. They were built for a purpose that thankfully was never tested. And they were built, again, as that safe space. And I just want to, my final point is just, again, imagining the people in the Home Guard that were going to be in those pillboxes. That pillbox and those 6 walls that were around them, that was their security blanket. That was their safety. And potentially anything outside of that was the fear that was coming towards them. And so it's been a fascinating project to be involved in. I've certainly learned a lot. And it's interesting to see how you can have these, on the face of it, lots of very different professions kind of coming together under the same, under the same blanket. No pun intended, but I'm going to go with it anyway. So thank you for listening. I'll pass the microphone back to our host. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask? Knight. Hello.
Absolutely. It was a two-pronged reason to it. So they had a 5-point plan for the defence of Britain, and along that was the central reserve of troops. So Dunkirk was essential. What happened at Dunkirk was essential for that, and they wanted to box up and compartmentalise parts of Britain. But you're absolutely right. Part of the building the pillboxes and building so many of them is the fact that, look, we are doing something to protect our homeland. Almost we're giving you a tool to help protect your own homes as well. Obviously, you can get into a longer discussion and a bigger discussion. The idea of the Home Guard as well was number 3 on their 5-point plan. It was a really important part about local people standing up and causing confusion. And again, that emotiveness of being now the Home Guard and defending your home. You can get into a big discussion of obviously, providing them with the pillboxes is one thing. The issue of them getting weapons quickly was completely different, because there are stories of platoons of Home Guards having one gun between them, kind of thing, and that's a different story. But it was very much a case of there was a strategic plan to it to kind of, as I said, box up the country. But there's also that idea of we are doing something to look after you, to defend you. There are 50 stop lines planned across the country in total. About 45 of them were built. I'm a Cornishman myself. There was one planned to be built across Cornwall, and that never happened. I guess it was furthest down the list of priorities, and us Cornish would have just been left to it in the event of an invasion. But absolutely, that psychological impact of seeing something was being done in your area, I think it was very, very powerful to ensuring that people would continue the fight and defend their homeland. Absolutely. Oh, seamlessly done.
Would anyone else like to ask a question to any of the artists, or does anyone want to share their idea on safe spaces?
Yeah, so what's really interesting is that there isn't, and that's one of the things that's come out of this conversation and the work that we've done together, is that the science is very much about what people say, what they describe, whether you can trigger memories, what kind of things trigger memories, but there's almost nothing on what memories feel like. And actually what has been so important about working with Helen is about what memories feel like. And there's another artist that I worked with. I took, what was that line you said at the end? Our roots, what was it? Our roots, is it still up there? Our roots save us. That is such an important line, because I'm gonna ask you if I can use that, because it's so fantastic. Because our roots are, to some extent, are our memories. I think they are the things that hold us in place. But I've worked with people and with another artist who don't have their memories. So I've worked with a lady who has very dense amnesia after having an infection in her brain. And actually, very interestingly, this artist drew parallel with place as well. So we went to an island called St Kilda. I don't know if anyone's heard of it. It's a tiny island that was occupied up until 1930 from prehistoric times. And then it got evacuated. And it's a tiny island off of Scotland, about, I can't remember how, 40 miles off of Scotland or something. And all that's left now is the buildings, all the buildings where they lived. And, interestingly, a military base. That's it. That's all that's there now. There's no phone. There's no way of contacting anyone when you get there. But what's very interesting is that made me aware, that whole visit and the parallels with this island that has lost all of its inhabitants. All you've got now is the kind of the remnants of their life. You've got the buildings. You've got the site. You can try and work out what their lives were like, but all you've got is what's left. And the lady with amnesia, that's all she's got as well. She has got the bits and pieces around her. She's got her house and she's got the things that belong to her, but she hasn't got the memories that are connected to that. So she talks a lot about, the weight or the weightlessness. So it's very interesting that Helen picked up on that word as well. And she talks about sort of feeling very lost and being isolated and being lost in place and time. And she's very articulate, she's very intelligent, she kind of knows information, but she doesn't ever feel that she's remembering. So what the artwork has really helped me to do is to understand how memories feel. And it's been so important. And I was going to ask you, when you made that decision that you had to go, what things did you feel were important to bring with you? If you don't mind me asking, what things did you want to take from when you came here? What were the things you wanted to rescue?
I took toys of my son, yeah, and maybe I think more and document, yeah, in my bag, and I want to pick up people and animals, and a lot of people who live on or who stay on that moment from my house and neighbors' houses. Yeah, they haven't car, and more important for me and for my family. And it's about yes, we are evacuated in the car, yeah, but I can't pick up my work. And a lot of people ask me, why you leave your work? Yeah, because, or why your husband leave your work? Because it's expensive. Bronze sculpture. Yeah, you know, it's horrible. Yeah, and he work a lot of time on this work, and I work a lot of time on my work. Yeah, why I can't do it? Because on this situation, you start to think not about not about work. The most important for you save people and animal. And it's really stressing situation. More important, pick up your neighbors and neighbor's dog and cat and snails. Yeah, yeah, it's horrible story. But for example, about this lady, she stay alone because his daughter and son live in Kiev, and she can't do anything in this situation. But I said, it's not about I'm good person or I'm brave. I think all people will do on this situation like me, because you started to understand this lady stay alone, yeah, and wanted and will be anything. And you can see what was with my house, and it's not just was in my flat, not just bombed it on targeting on my flat, it's targeting and other flat too. For example, I can't understand how they did it, but they are targeting in the underground floor. Yeah, I think maybe it's a pathway in window, yeah, in targeting drop to drop in window. Yeah, I can't understand. And this lady live on the first floor, and then he stayed on that moment in home because she have a lot of dogs, snails, and other babies. Yes, and I think it will be something horrible. Of course, we must collect it. The first you think about your neighbors, about your children, your neighbors, and after that about dogs, cats, and snails. Sorry.
There's one thing that you said that reminded me a bit of some of the work that Helen's done, which is to do with the way that we have kind of collective memories. So the other thing that comes up quite a lot is, and that has been studied more scientifically, is how memories are, I have my memories and everyone else has their memories, but actually if you go through a shared experience together, then you have shared memories of that. And you spoke so powerfully about how people came together and how it didn't matter what characters, people just came together.
Yes, it's not about characters. It's not about personality. It's maybe more about empathic. Yeah. It's the first humans. It's a top of humans feeling. Yeah, empathic, because. In my meaning, of course, I'm not sure it is true, yeah, but I think it's different point here between peoples and animals, because animals they can be together, yeah, in the dangerous situation. Yes, of course they can. They can save children's, yes, but about empathic. Never lion can be empathic for ghost, yes, or for I know, for victim, yeah, something small, but human can do it, yeah.
Yeah, and Helen, when you were working with the ladies in Worthing, you found that when you pulled them together and when you had people who started talking together, didn't you? And they I think it's worth you just talking about the difference in their memories of wartime and how the teenagers remembered it, or the people who'd been teenagers remembered it differently to the people who'd been children, but also how they were collective memories and they kind of came and discussed them together.
Yeah, so that was a project with Worthing Museum, and I worked with a group of elderly. They were all ladies, just coincidentally, but and talking about World War II memories again. And there were two groups. There was one group that were very elderly and had, I think they all had various stages of dementia, and then there was a sort of younger elderly group who, and that group were children during the war, and for them, actually, the war was. They talked about it as if they said it was scary. They were scared, and they didn't, some of them had been evacuated or whatever. And then, but the older group, sorry, I'll just move my mic. The older group, they were taking an active part in the war. So they were Land Army and RAF. Well, they were ladies RAF, so they didn't fly planes, but they were. They worked for the RAF, and they talked about it in much more positive terms, because I think it's because they had a role to play and they were doing something. They thought it was. They talked about it like it was brilliant. They had the time of their lives.
There was something to do with tights, wasn't there? Wasn't it? They sort of got very excited that they could get tights from America.
Yes,
or something.
yes. They could get stockings and meet up with soldiers. I mean, it was all really exciting. Go to dances and things like that. They had. I mean, I'm sure it's been over the years become much more, but according to them, they had an absolute brilliant time. And the collective, like talking to each other, I found that actually. There were these two lovely elderly ladies, and they'd just sit them down together, and they would talk about their memories of World War II, and it would just go on for ages, and I didn't have to say anything. They just sat back and listened, and they just went, "Oh yes, do you remember that and remember this?" And they would encourage each other's memories, that they came through that conversation.
And it's important to say that they weren't actually. You didn't ask them to talk about the war, did you? You just took clothing in, and it was the clothing that prompted those discussions.
Yeah,
so you didn't say, "Tell me about the war." You gave them some clothing, and that's
yeah. I mean, we tried to get them to talk about other things like wedding dresses, and they weren't. We thought wedding dresses would be a topic, and it absolutely wasn't. It wasn't at all. But they were more interested in that session than talking about sanitary towels than wedding dresses. It's far more of a topic than wedding dresses. So yeah, it's quite interesting. Not what you'd expect.
They obviously didn't have happy marriages then.
Maybe that was it.
I think one of my roles as working with artists is that what they draw out of a situation, and I think all three of these artists have really shown us this evening what we can draw from the creative path, and certainly Helen has taken this opportunity and absolutely extracted so much interest and so much valuable work within Taunton, and brought these, to our historian and our psychologist to us, and we're so grateful to you. And I can certainly say that it's triggered a lot of my memories, and there are people in the audience too who have a memory of maybe a much lesser displacement of 1974 in Cyprus, and I know that there are people here that were also involved in that, and I was speaking to you, Irena, about it too. And even as children, it just takes going through this process with Helen has created a new insight into my memory of what it meant to leave a country and never to return, and it's been a wonderful journey. I know that we are just going to have to be wrapping up soon. So would Helen like to finish this off? She's done an incredible job, and I'm so proud of her, and I hope everyone comes to see. I wrap my fear around me like a blanket at Close House and spend some time in the show here. But Helen, I'll
Well, I don't think, apart from saying thank you to everyone, and for sharing your work and your stories and your knowledge and everything. So yeah, no, it's great. Yeah, and come and see the exhibitions and things. Yeah, thank you. Our roots save us. Yeah. Thank you.